Today we're going to be repairing a 3-foot kangaroo hide snake whip. This whip was sent to me from a customer, and unfortunately their pet got to the whip, something that just happens. You know, it's impossible to keep it from happening every time. So we're just going to kind of go over this, and I'm going to show you how I would go about replacing a whip. So first of all, as you can see, the wrist loop has been torn off. So we will have to remove the heel knot completely, as well as the foundation, because my wrist loops are actually tied on first thing to the thong. Secondly, we have the fall has been torn off, but it looks like some of these strands are still intact, so we will lose just a little bit of the overall length of this whip, maybe an inch or two, but it's nothing big. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to start with the heel knot because that's kind of the bigger project as far as replacing this whip. So we're going to take this knot off, see how things look underneath. So the first thing we're going to do here is I just have a very nice sharp brand new razor blade. There we go. Just kind of discard that. Here's the foundation. Now this is the part where we do have some nails that we're going to have to pull out, but first of all just kind of take this sheath off. This is what I use to just kind of build up the knot. A little bit of tape under there. We can just cut through that. And now as you can see, the nails are exposed. We can go ahead and grab a pair of pliers and pull those out. And now this can be removed. That one's a little tough to grab. There we are. Okay, so now you can see I've wrapped this with artificial sinew. So I'm going to actually just grab my razor blade again and just very gently. We are getting very close to the thong itself, the overlay strands, which we do not want to cut. So I'm just going to unravel this the best I can. Once these two sides of the wrist loop come out, things will slide out a lot easier. It'll free up some room. I'm just trying to dismantle this. There we go. One of them is gone. Here comes the other. There we are. So now it's just a matter of unraveling this artificial sinew until we get down to the bare thong, with the exception of a little bit of athletic tape that I've used to hold the overlay strands in place. So that's what we're looking at now. At this point I'm going to go ahead and tie another 4-strand flat braided wrist loop out of some kangaroo hide. So this is a 4-strand flat braided wrist loop across the two. This one goes over. I'm going to go under like this. Do the opposite of what you see in front of you. Over, under. That's one pass. This strand goes over, so I'm going to go under. This strand goes under, so I'm going to go over. And so on. I'm going to carry this down. The strand goes under here, so I'm going to go over. And that's what we're doing the whole time. So I'm going to go ahead and plait this entire wrist loop. So I plaited a 4-strand wrist loop here, and I made it a little bit longer than I really need it to be. And once I'm done, I like to just tie it off by taking 2 strands here from the right side and just tying a half hitch, like how we would tie a fall on. This just temporarily keeps it from unraveling. Now it's time to attach it to our heel foundation. So I've got my wrist loop here. I have the whip. Since I made it a little bigger than I needed it, I like to do that just so I have a little bit of extra room for error. It's going to be a fairly small wrist loop. About like that. Make sure that it is, you have your hide here, hair side on the outside. It's sometimes easy if you're working too quickly to actually have it to where you get it, and there's a twist in it, so just pay attention. And then I think that's a decent size for our wrist loop. I'll actually take a staple gun here. And then on the other side, make sure we get this sized correctly. And I'll do the same thing. Just like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bind this a little bit with some artificial sinew and then cut equally on both sides. I got the whip and a clamp here, and I'm just going to bind this with some artificial sinew. Those two staples that I put in will actually be the primary source of an anchor for our knot, because this is such a light whip, there's not a lot of pressure being exerted, so you can kind of get away with a couple of staples. Unlike for a 12-foot whip, you would obviously need more to hold it, especially if whoever is using the whip is using the wrist loop. There's a lot of pressure there, so you would obviously need a little bit more of an anchor. I'm just wrapping this not too tight, but tight enough. The thing I love about artificial sinew is when you cut it, you just press it right into itself and it stays. Just trim this a little bit. We're getting ready to snip the excess off of the wrist loop, but before we do that, I like to take a piece of athletic tape and just wrap this once. And what this is going to do is it's going to protect the strands of artificial sinew, because if we accidentally cut one of those, this whole foundation where we've wrapped will loosen. We don't want that. And we want to make sure that we get them the same length on both sides. So I'm going to start with this side. That looks good. We want it to be flush with the tape that we just added there. That looks pretty good. And turning it this way, we're going to get the second one. That looks nice. You could use a razor blade for this, but that's kind of dangerous because you can actually cut your overlay strands if you're not careful, and this just kind of protects that from happening. I actually take part of the snippers here and just kind of dig it underneath those leather strands of the wrist loop, and then it just cuts nice and cleanly and evenly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a leather strip about maybe the width of my finger here, and it's going to wrap up here. It's going to go over through the top, and it's going to rest here. And once again, that's going to kind of counteract the height of this wrist loop, because on the two sides, on either side of the wrist loops, it's more shallow here, so we want to build this up so the knot is nice and round. So I was actually able to salvage the old strip of leather that was on the whip before I disassembled it. Okay, so this is what we're going to use. You can see it's just a strip of leather just to cover up the ugliness in the middle here, and what I'll be doing is just draping it over just like that. And once again, I'm going to staple this into place. So I've just stapled that into place. Now what we're going to do is give this a few more wraps of artificial sinew to build that up a little bit more. Then we're going to roll the foundation. This also eliminates any sharp edges created by the staples, which is unlikely, but it just kind of ensures that there won't be any. Just building up that foundation, making it a little bit taller. Check the bottom. Looks good. I don't know why I dropped that. Okay, I'm going to give this a little roll, a light roll, to just round off this foundation. It'll be time to tie the heel knot, which will be a 2-pass 6x7. Now this is just going to need a light touch, that's it. I'm actually using my hand to roll this whip. On a whip as small as this, it is possible, very possible, to overdo it. So you're just trying to get an overall round shape in that foundation. So I'm just using my hand. See how the sinew is creeping up? What I'm actually going to do is give it one more layer of the hockey tape just to keep things from sliding around. Keep the sinew in place. Okay, let's tie a 2-pass 6x7 Turk's head knot. There's one pass down. Getting ready to expand it to a 6x7. It's currently in its 5x4 single pass stage. If you're interested in tying this particular knot, I have a video, a separate video on how to do it. Link in the description. So there's a 6x7 single pass. I'm going to finish this knot up with another pass. Lewis, what did you do? Why did you do that? We're getting dangerously close to finishing this heel knot. Just a couple more passes left. Literally just a couple. There they are. 2 more. Heel's done. And we'll move on to the fall hitch. All done. Gonna give it a roll. There's the heel knot after the roll. I'd say this little whip is on the road to recovery. Now, we're going to repair the fall. I'm going to start by taking a pair of pliers and just pulling the top strand, which we feed through the fall, which is the last strand that's tied. We're going to pull that out, and this should loosen things up. Right here, we're going to loosen that, pull this out. And this will come out fairly easily. Now I'm trying to, if I can, keep as much of these strands as possible, so we lose a minimal overall length of the whip. I'm estimating we'll probably lose about maybe 1.5 inches, possibly 2 inches. But if there's enough of these strands left, and if they're healthy enough, we can actually reuse some of them. Gonna go ahead and cut the fall. Be careful not to cut the strands below. And that'll come right off there. And now I'll be able to just pull these right through and untie these strands. Gonna unravel probably about up to here, 3 inches. That'll give me a good sight on what I have to work with. So I've unplaited 3.5 to 4 inches up. We see our 4 strands here. And I've also tied off the inner core strands, which are previously dropped strands, just so I wouldn't get them confused with what I'm working with, the working strands. So we're all ready to go. All we need is a fall. For the fall, I have this 12-ounce piece of cowhide, just a gray piece of cowhide here, nothing special. And to cut this fall, I'm using an Aussie strander. These things are great because you can adjust the width of the strand you're cutting with this little wheel on the right-hand side. I like to start with about 1/4 inch. I've actually already started it. It can be tricky to get it started. Make sure you got a fresh blade in here because it's a lot of hide to cut through. And what I'll do is I'll just go down, and I like my falls tapered, so every few inches I'll narrow it, continue, narrow it a little more, and what that's doing is it's forcing more hide into the blade, and that's how we're going to get that nice tapered fall. See how much left we have? Okay. See, I can see it getting more narrow. A little more. And good. That's how I like to make falls. Next, we're going to put the fall down. Just going to make a little slit here. Not too big of a hole. And that's where the whip will fit through. You can see the opening there. Cut off the top, kind of round it off a little bit. Now I'm going to slip it over a hook and just kind of shape the fall a little bit. I have a fresh razor blade, and what I'm doing is I'm just shaping the fall by trimming the corners, the sharp corners this way. It'll cut through the air better, making the whip easier to crack. Okay, so we got our fall nice and shaped up. Edges are smooth, so it'll cut through the air. I'm going to start by just opening up the eye of this fall. We're going to slide the core strands through first. Just like this. Next, we'll slide through our working strands, the 4 strands that we will be tying this fall on with. And once I get these strands in through the eye of the fall, I'm going to plait as far down as I can until I feel like I don't have any more strand length to where it's going to force me to just go ahead and tie that fall hitch, because I'm still trying to preserve as much of the overall length of this whip as I can. So let's see. I think I could get away with like another pass or two. Under 1 over 1, 4 plat. That's kind of pushing it there. Yeah, we can get a couple more. So we're going to lose about a couple inches, looks like 1.5 to 2 inches in the overall length of this whip. Which for damage like this, it's kind of standard. If you really wanted to preserve the overall length of the whip, you could just go up a foot or two and just insert new strands, staggered, so you wouldn't see a bulge or bulkiness. So we're going to tie on this fall hitch just like we do with any other whip project. Around the back, through. Now these strands are not going to be as strong as they were when we started. I forgot to tie a knot to mark the strand. We really don't have enough room to do that. I like to mark the strands that I tie so I don't get them confused. Sometimes it's hard to tell which ones you've already slid through. Tell you what we'll do is we'll just mark it with a highlighter. Bright orange, can't miss that. Next. Towards the ends too, because we don't want to see that on the finished product. We want it to be at the ends of the strands, so they'll just be cut away. So in other words, right at the tip. Last strand. Yeah, we really cut that short, didn't we? Look at that. That's all we have to work with sliding this through the fall. But there is a nifty little way to do this, and I'll show you how. First, since that's the last strand we pulled, we can go ahead and tighten this up now, but do so very carefully. Like I said, this leather is a lot weaker than when we started. Lewis over there is just going crazy. So this is how I'm going to do this. I'm going to take my lacing needle, and we obviously don't have enough on this strand to where we can just lace it up now and feed it through, so I'm going to feed it through now before attaching it. And we're going under all these strands and under the fall, a little tight. I need some leather so I don't put a hole in my hand from pushing this needle. There we are. Now we can take the strand, twist it the opposite way. I twisted it the wrong way. Now we're feeding it in to our needle. And then we should be able to pull it through. Hopefully it'll stay in there. I think it will. I'm going to grab this needle and pull our strand through. I'm actually going to use the pliers because it's so tight. I should have used some plating soap. There's our strand coming through. Just made it. Going to grasp it with our pliers and just firmly, don't go yanking on this thing, it will break. Even though it's kangaroo, it's been stressed. Now we can go through one by one and tighten up our strands. These strands. And give the fall a pull. So where it's snug. Looks good. Gonna leave this a little bit longer than normal just in case. I'm gonna snip it. Now we can actually unravel some of this ugly black nylon thread that I used to hold those 4 strands together. And we're gonna take those off. I'm going to cut all of our strands here the same length. And there we go. Okay. Alright, there we go. After repair is all said and done, I like to kind of go over the whole whip just with a little bit of conditioner. You can see how light that, this is the same hide here. Same kangaroo hide, it's natural, but as you can see, it's very dry. And we need to get it nice and hydrated. And I'll just kind of work my way down the whip, just giving it, the whole thing, a nice coat of conditioner. Hit the fall again, really pay close attention to the fall hitch. Well guys, there you have it. A emergency surgery of an 8-plat 3-foot kangaroo hide snake whip. Let's test it out. It's so quiet out here, wow. Success. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something new. All that's left now is to ship this whip back to my customer. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. I've got a whole bunch of tutorials that have already been filmed. They're just waiting to be edited. So thank you guys. I'm going to hit the post office. See you in the next one.